Well, in the recent reshuffle by Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries was appointed as cultural secretary. So let's see what they've got to say about that. Are they going to be happy with it? Are they not going to be happy with it?
You say the BBC should adopt the adversarial approach, which is, as you rightly identify, common in newspapers, in British courts, and which is the basis, after all, of John Stuart Mill's argument for democracy and freedom of speech, that we should let truth confront error, and from that we will discover what is right and what is wrong. I agree with you about that, and my central point tonight is the BBC agrees too. It does encourage adversarial debate. It does encourage and permit such debate. The truth is, though, that its presenters don't take part in it. They are impartial and their guests take part in the debate.
Just before we move on from that one, I mean, you know the counter-argument to that one, don't you? Which is, in a sense, what the presenters do and say is neither here nor there. It's all in the selection of the guests. So, for instance, if you've got a panel on Question Time or the Today programme, it's the selection of A, the story, and B, the people you get to come on and talk about the story that makes all the difference. And it can seem entirely benign, but actually it's in the choices that are made that are nothing to do with the presenter, where the bias creeps in. That's the argument.
Colin, again, you're a very intelligent man, and of course, story selection is vital and guest selection is vital. But the BBC is a very large organisation, as well as being a very influential organisation. And in all of its choice of guests, it tries to be balanced. It might surprise you to know that I have got a few concerns about some BBC entertainment output, because I do think that has sometimes reflected the views of the playwrights who have written the scripts, rather than a balanced view, and that sometimes troubles me too. Now, Nadine Dorries as Secretary of State, you're certainly right that she has replaced in Oliver Dowden someone who was a critical friend of the BBC. In what she said in the past, Nadine Dorries has appeared to be not so much a friend as a critic, and I am concerned about that. I should think that some of my former colleagues at the BBC are concerned too. The BBC does something for all of us. There's a lot of BBC coverage that I don't watch and BBC radio output that I don't listen to, but I'd pay the licence fee for the Today programme and The World Tonight alone.
Tim, I mean, we are men of a certain age, and you know, to say that this is a service that reaches everybody, it's just palpably not and demonstrably not true anymore. I mean, if my kids don't watch telly, and they're not alone in that. I mean, they don't get their news from TV. You know, they get it from Facebook, they get it from their online sources.
That's probably true, Colin, but they tend to engage with GB.
Yeah, okay, this whole BBC bias thing is a very interesting topic. Very interesting depending on what perspective you have. Because in a way, he's right. The argument is that bias is in the selection of the guests or in the selection of the speakers and not necessarily in the presenters. But from my side, I don't feel like they have a very good balance on certain things. I mean, the problem that I seem to see is when the left has got any kind of representation that gets seen as bias. What these people seem to want is just the other side, is just theirs, just center to right politics. That's it. An interesting observation that I've had is that news tends to skew right wing, and the entertainment or culture side tends to skew left wing. More progressive topics were addressed in the shows, and these guys on the right would complain anytime someone of a different gender played a different role or multiculturalism was expressed. They'd start saying, oh, look, forced diversity, they're pushing this on us. This is because it's left-wing bias. That's my 2 cents, really, when it comes down to the BBC bias. I think it is really more along those lines. And I'll give the right-wing reactionary people their dues, because they are completely correct with the way the BBC was pushing for Remain. And they did put Leavers in a bad light. I do think that bias was definitely there, but that doesn't mean they're left-wing or right-wing. I guess, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
It does throw up some iniquities though, doesn't it? I don't want to make this excessively ad hominem, but I'll cite it because it's an example I think which encapsulates quite a lot. I started my monologue there talking about Jeremy Vine. I come back to my essential point, Tim. If somebody doesn't like what I'm gobbing off about tonight, well, it's neither here nor there. They can turn off the telly, end of the story. Somebody listens to Jeremy Vine tomorrow, maybe he's going on about cyclists or whatever, somebody really objects to what he's saying, and I know you'll say, oh, well, they can write into this board or this website and make their complaint abundantly clear. That changes very little. People, the consumer, the customer is not involved in that equation.
Well, I don't think that's true, because the BBC is extremely sensitive to criticism of its presenters. I'm sorry if you felt upset by something that Jeremy has said.
But really, I don't feel remotely upset, Tim. I just think it flags up a fundamental discrepancy between, as I say, the ability of a customer, we have them, we'd like to have more of them, who can say, actually, he's talking a load of old rot, I'm switching off, and somebody who's listening to BBC output, who maybe arrives at the same conclusion, but can do absolutely nothing about it. And that's why I use
they can certainly switch off.
It's morally unsustainable.
Well, they can certainly switch off, Colin. So that comparison's a little unfair. You can certainly switch the television off when you.
They've got to keep paying the license.
Yeah, but you can't pay the license and have every single thing on that channel suit just you. There's 60+ million people in this country. Come on. It's ridiculous. The BBC has to represent the country, has to make things for everybody in the country. You're not the only guy in the country.
That's my point.
There's a very important point.
Go on, really quickly.
About how the license fees enforced. You give the impression that it's the BBC which has made non-payment enforceable in law, i.e. payment enforceable in law, sorry. It's not the BBC that makes payment of the licence fee enforceable in law. It's the government. Yep. The government has been asked on many occasions by people who take your view to make the licence fee unenforceable.
Tim.
But the BBC has kept the enforceable licence fee because Conservative governments have insisted that they want the licence fee to remain enforceable in law. Now, Nadine Dorries might decide to change that. I hope she doesn't.
We're out of time. Appreciate your time very much indeed.
Well, he didn't want to hear that bit, did he? He did not want to hear the rest of what that man had to say. Okay, this should be fun. Let's see what Dan Wootton has to say about Nadine Dorries' appointment.
Our new Culture Secretary, the woman ultimately responsible for the BBC within government, believes the licence fee poll tax for state TV is more in keeping in a Soviet-style country. She also backed a campaign to decriminalise non-payment of the licence fee. We know this because she tweeted it. And she's completely right.
Oh, got receipts. He's really happy. He wants her to be Culture Secretary because she hates the BBC.
Right, by the way. On her blog, this is before she was named Culture Secretary yesterday, she even went further, writing such a structure of payment and aggressive persecution would be more in keeping in a Soviet-style country. It would appear that there is no politician in any party brave enough to take on the BBC for fear of retribution and punishment via its political reporting. She has also said the BBC is a biased left-wing organisation which is seriously failing in its political representation. She's back in the cabinet and she must have the balls to not just talk tough about the need to reform the sprawling left-wing monolith that is the BBC, but to make...
To see the sprawling left-wing monolith that is the BBC. Like, Dan, are you on drugs, mate?
Make genuine changes. The corporation's appointment just yesterday of a hard left-wing activist journalist, Jess Brammer, to run its news channels.
Again, hard left-wing activist journalist. Like, yeah, she worked for the Huffington Post, and this is what I was saying before. These people, they want you have to be some strict right-winger. Otherwise, it's left-wing bias.
Shows why such a programme of reforms is now an urgent necessity. Dories must also follow through with plans by the now sacked Minister John Whittingdale to finally sell Channel 4, which is a long-held Tory promise. It makes absolutely no sense that such a hard-left organisation, complete with the most biased news service in existence, should remain owned by the state. Now, usually I'm a proponent...
No, can roll that back. What did you just say?
Dorries must also follow through with plans by the now sacked Minister John Whittingdale to finally sell Channel 4, which is a long-held Tory promise. Makes absolutely no sense that such a hard-left organisation, complete with the most biased news service in existence...
Hard left, most biased news agency in existence. Why do people get to spout absolute lies and get paid for it?
...should remain owned by the state. Now, usually I'm a proponent of former Prime Minister Tony Blair shutting the hell up because he had his turn, and we're sick to the back teeth of the bloke who took us into the Iraq War under false pretences.
Based. Yeah, see? We can agree on something.
So forgive me for just a moment for sharing a fascinating intervention he's made in a new book called Broken Heartlands by the journalist Seb Payne about Labour's former Red Wall. Speaking of those former Heartland Labour supporters, Blair slammed his party's metropolitan approach to the culture wars. So he said, "I cannot tell you how much they hate this tearing down the statues, sacking people if they made an off-colour remark. It's death to the left, and that is what will keep the right in power unless you deal with it. Keir will be smart enough not to engage in the culture war, but I don't think that's going to be enough for that vote. They're going to want him to engage on the right side of it." I disagree with Blair on one point, though. Keir certainly isn't smart enough to balance that. Has Tony forgotten this photo of the leader of no opposition and his uber-woke deputy taking the knee to score some cheap points at the height of the BLM movement? I congratulate the more than 4 million people who, according to official figures, have stopped wearing masks in public over the course of the summer. I'm one of them. We've looked at the evidence, and we know...
And you're one of the reasons the numbers are going up. Good for you!
Those dirty, germ-coated face coverings are nothing more than a virtue signalling exercise designed to keep the public terrified. Despite the fact more than 90% of English adults have COVID antibodies. In fact, I looked at the latest numbers from the ONS this afternoon. I think it's up to over 94%. And the infection fatality rate of COVID-19 is 0.096%, comparable, really, to the flu. If masks are seen as a way out of the pandemic, then our strategy is well and truly screwed. Ministers should hold firm against the hysterical behavioural scientists slamming them for staying unmuzzled during this cabinet meeting on Tuesday and in Parliament this week too. Even though Professor Stephen Riker, a member of the SAGE subcommittee advising on behavioural science, surprise, surprise, he's a psychologist, isn't he, at the University of St Andrews, and he described these images as truly toxic. I'd say it's far more toxic insisting a population cover half their faces in public with very limited scientific evidence will stop the spread of COVID-19.
What are you talking about? There is plenty of evidence, plenty of scientific backing of how masks help prevent the spread of viruses. You're lying. You're a liar. Simple. Oh my God. Oh, thank God this is only one more minute. I'm about to throw something out the window and hope that it lands on Dan Wood.
And if you were watching last night, you'll remember my absolute shock and horror at the US President seeming to forget the name of the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
Thank you, Boris. And I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it, Mr. Prime Minister.
Just imagine for a second that Donald Trump had made such a worrying gaffe.
Trump did make all them gaffes all the time. Wow. This is the state of the news today. This is England, 2021. Enjoy.